Hello and welcome to the second video in our 12 series of different and forms of stressors or of technostress. In this video, we're going to talk about invasion of privacy, which is a serious stressor for a lot of people. And I'm going to start with a story. At some point, I was hired in a big corporation. At some point, unfortunately, I was on a sick leave. Very funny or ironic, but I was on a burnout sick leave, which is also what made me afterwards investigate technostress, right? And I was away for maybe 3 months because I was sick, and I was planning to quit when I got back because I knew that that company was not a match for me. However, the company knew that most likely I will quit. So when I came back, they told me that they had already, and I hadn't quit at that point, they told me they had already taken my computer, my work computer, because somebody else needed it. I knew that that was probably and likely not true. A big corporation has a load of computers that they might use, and there were no recent hirings. At that point, I felt really invaded. I felt like my privacy was, harassed because even if I only had work related things on that computer, I also had my contract, my work contract. I also had some documents that were on the boundary between private documents, but that I needed to use them in a organizational setting. For example, my passport, I needed to buy flight tickets, right? My personal ID also, because I needed to buy flight tickets and so on. So I wondered, who handled my computer? How did they know my password? What did they do with my data? Where did my data go? And can I be safe, or someone else is going to maybe steal my identity? Yeah. So this can be described as an invasion of privacy, a stressor that is related to invasion of privacy. There are many more situations in which your employees or you yourself might be afraid because you don't know how is your company monitoring your computer, and if you're using your phone, your personal phone, in the interest of the company as well at some point, or if you're using the company phone to also make private calls, you might be uncertain as to what extent are those calls being recorded and or what happens, right? So this is a serious stressor and a serious concern for your employees, or maybe even for yourself, as if you're an organization, what's important to do is to make sure that you are transparent about how you are monitoring your employees' computer or their private phones. If you are monitoring it, you should not be monitoring their private phones or the company phones, right? And it's important to reassure them that you're not using their data to harass their privacy. Other examples are when a lot of companies, what they sometimes did was to check their employees' private social media profiles. There's many stories and many anecdotes of employees who have lost their jobs because they were allegedly on a sick leave, and their employer looked at their Instagram profile or their Facebook profile and somehow concluded that whatever they saw in those pictures did not match the reality of those employees being on sick leave. Now, if you've ever been on a burnout related sick leave, you know that the most important thing to do is for you to relax, to read books, to meet up with your friends if you're able to go and walk in nature, and traveling is also an option. If you're posting such pictures, your employer might jump to the conclusion that you're actually lying and you're not on a sick leave. So it's important as a company, do yourself a favor, do not check your employees' private social media accounts, because they might be sick and it might still that they're having a great time, and the two things can go hand in hand together. There's also a lot of accounts of people losing their jobs because of comments they have, maybe politically charged comments that they have made online. So it's important for us as employees to remember that the best thing we can do for ourselves is to keep our private opinions and private life private, because we can never know who is going to see that post about us. Okay, I know of a case, another case from many years ago. Shoshana Zuboff, surveillance capitalist activist, wrote about a person who has been to prison, and the case was very well known in Spain. Unfortunately, even though they have served the sentence and the person was rehabilitated and no longer a criminal, that person could not get a job because all their data or information about their crime, the committed crime, was all over the internet. That led to a historical lawsuit against Google, and for that reason, we now have the right to erase some of the data that might be found about us online. So even though that right exists, sometimes whatever information we post online about ourselves will remain there forever, and it could have consequences for our professional life as well. So we must be careful. And if you're a company, it's important, I believe, to remember to not jump to conclusions about your employees. But of course, if the values that the person has does not match the value of your company, sometimes that can also lead to an interruption of the collaboration, to say it mildly. Invasion of privacy is a serious stressor. I think this is the point that I'm trying to make. It's important to protect ourselves if we are employees, and as organizations, it's important to be clear and transparent with our employees about how and what type of data we collect, how do we monitor our employees and what they're doing in their free time, and to what extent and for what purpose. Perhaps it's also important to communicate these are the values of our company, and it's important to remember, if you're an employee, that you also need to portray these values in your private life and in your private time, just to be upfront about who you are as a company and see if you're really truly a match. That has become increasingly important in the society that we live in today. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for your attention. I'm Raluca Alexandra Stana. I'm a researcher, a scientist, researching Technostress, and I'm your guide to help you thrive in a hyper-digitalized world in the hope to save you time, money, and talent. See you next time.